You walked past a stranger today, maybe several, on the sidewalk, in a store, at a coffee shop. You didn't make eye contact. You didn't raise your guard. You didn't reach for a weapon. And when you got home, you probably didn't check the perimeter for intruders before sitting down on your couch. That casual indifference to other humans, that ability to exist beside strangers without fear, is one of the most remarkable achievements of modern civilization. And it would have been completely impossible 13,000 years ago. For almost the entire history of our species, the most dangerous thing in your environment wasn't a predator. It wasn't the cold. It wasn't starvation. It was other people. And the question is, why? Why were ancient humans so violently, relentlessly at war with each other? Why couldn't they just get along? The answer begins with a mass grave. In the 1960s, archaeologists discovered a site called Jebel Sahaba in what is now Sudan, along the banks of the Nile River. It's also known as Cemetery 117. It dates back roughly 13,000 years, and it contains the remains of 61 individuals, men, women, and children. More than half of them show evidence of violent death. Arrowheads embedded in bones, crushed skulls, defensive wounds on forearms where people raised their arms to block incoming blows. Some bodies were found with multiple projectiles, suggesting they were shot by several attackers at once. This wasn't a famine. This wasn't disease. This was a massacre. And it might be the earliest evidence of organized warfare in human history. But Jebel Sahaba isn't unique. It's just the oldest we've found so far. As archaeologists continue digging, the picture becomes clearer and darker. At a site called Talheim in Germany, dating to about 7,000 years ago, 34 people were found in a pit, killed by axe blows to the back of the head. At Crow Creek in South Dakota, nearly 500 bodies were found in a fortified village dating to the 14th century, many showing signs of scalping and mutilation. At Schlitz in Austria, around 67 individuals were found in a ditch, their skulls smashed and their bodies left to rot without burial. The evidence is overwhelming. Ancient humans fought. A lot. Lawrence Keeley, an archaeologist at the University of Illinois, wrote a book called War Before Civilization that shattered a long-standing myth. The idea that prehistoric humans lived in peaceful harmony and that war was invented by modern states. Keeley's research showed that approximately 90 to 95% of known societies throughout history engaged in, at least occasional, warfare. Many fought constantly, and the casualty rates were staggering. In some prehistoric populations, warfare accounted for up to 30% of all male deaths. That's a higher percentage than even the most brutal modern wars. So what drove this violence? Was it just human nature? Or was something else going on? The first answer is the simplest one: resources. Ancient humans lived on the edge of survival. A drought that lasted 2 extra months. A river that shifted course. A herd of animals that migrated early. Any of these could mean the difference between feeding your children and watching them starve. And when resources got tight, the tribe next door, the one sitting on a water source or a grove of fruit trees or a hunting ground, stopped being neighbors. They became obstacles. You might think, couldn't they just trade? Share? Negotiate? Sometimes, yes. But here's the problem. In a world with no written language, no legal system, no police, and no authority higher than the tribal leader, trust was a luxury. You couldn't sign a contract. You couldn't call a mediator. If the other tribe promised to share hunting grounds and then broke that promise, your only recourse was violence. Or starvation. The second answer is revenge. And this one is deeper, more psychological, and far more destructive. In tribal societies, an attack on one member of your group was an attack on everyone. If someone from a neighboring tribe killed your cousin, you didn't call the police. You and your brothers grabbed your spears and went after the killer's tribe. But then their tribe wanted revenge for the people you just killed. And so on. Forever. Anthropologists who study tribal warfare call this the cycle of vengeance. And in some societies, it lasted for generations. A war that started over a stolen goat could still be producing casualties 50 years later. The third answer is evolutionary. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. We are not the only primates that wage war. Jane Goodall documented chimpanzee warfare at Gom Stream National Park in Tanzania in the 1970s. One group of chimps systematically hunted down and killed every member of a rival group over 4 years. More recently, at Ngogo in Uganda's Kabale National Park, chimpanzees have been engaged in what scientists are calling a civil war since 2018, with at least 28 confirmed killings. These aren't random acts of aggression. They're coordinated raids. Patrols of males move silently into rival territory, isolate individuals, and attack them with lethal force. Chimpanzees are our closest living relatives. We share 98.8% of our DNA. And if they wage war, organized, deliberate, strategic war, then the capacity for group violence isn't a human invention. It's an inherited trait. It's in the architecture of our brains, written there by millions of years of evolution. But here's the critical question. If warfare is natural, does that mean it's inevitable? Not exactly. And this is where the story takes a turn. Steven Pinker, a cognitive psychologist at Harvard, wrote a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature. In it, he compiled mountains of data showing that violence, homicide, warfare, execution, cruelty, has been steadily declining for centuries. The average person today is far less likely to die violently than at any other point in human history. By a massive margin. How? Pinker identifies several forces. The rise of states with monopoly on violence, the spread of commerce, which makes other people more valuable alive than dead, the expansion of literacy and empathy, and the development of international norms and institutions. In other words, we didn't eliminate the impulse for violence. We built systems around it. Walls, laws, contracts, courts, police. The entire scaffolding of civilization exists, in part, to contain a drive that evolution put inside us hundreds of thousands of years ago. Think about that the next time you walk past a stranger. That effortless moment of mutual non-aggression. You don't attack them, they don't attack you, is the product of thousands of years of cultural engineering. It's not natural. It's not default. It's an achievement. One that ancient humans, living in a world without any of those systems, never had access to. They had something else. They had the tribe, a group of 30 to 150 people you knew, trusted, and would die for. Everyone outside that circle was a potential threat. Not because they were evil. Not because ancient humans were savages. But because in a world of scarcity, danger, and zero institutional trust, treating outsiders as threats wasn't cruelty. It was survival. War wasn't a glitch in the human operating system. It was a feature. One that kept your group alive when resources collapsed, when neighbors raided, when the world turned hostile. The fact that it also produced unimaginable suffering, massacres like Jebel Sahaba, cycles of revenge that lasted generations, casualty rates that would horrify a modern demographer, didn't matter to evolution. Evolution doesn't optimize for happiness. It optimizes for survival. And for most of human history, the tribe that fought survived. The tribe that didn't. The next time you hear about a conflict somewhere in the world, a border dispute, a resource war, a cycle of retaliation that seems irrational and endless, don't just see it as a modern political failure. See it for what it also is, an ancient program, still running, still executing code that was written when your ancestors stood on a hillside 13,000 years ago and looked at the tribe across the valley and decided that the water they were sitting on was worth killing for. We didn't invent war, but we are the first species that might actually figure out how to stop it. If you found this interesting, subscribe for more videos on the hidden science behind human behavior. And if you've ever thought about what it would be like to live in a world with no laws, no police, and no trust, tell me in the comments how long you think you'd last. I'll see you in the next video.